Every month, the world releases new data on the greenhouse gases warming our planet. Most people never see these numbers or feel that they're too technical to understand, but they shape the weather we experience, the food we grow, the energy we pay for, and the future we're walking toward. Today, I'm breaking down the latest climate trace update for September 2025. So, are we going up or down? Hello friends and welcome back to Terra Sistina. In September 2025, the world emitted 4.94 billion tons of greenhouse gases. That is 0.66% higher than this time last year. Year to date, emissions are also slightly higher, up to 1% compared to 2024. Another thing to mention is that methane, also a powerful warming gas, increased as well. These changes may look small, but just imagine a giant bathtub that is already overflowing. Every extra drop still spills onto the floor. That's essentially what rising emissions are doing to the planet's stability. But which parts of life are driving these increases? Climate Trace tracks emissions across 9 major sectors. And here's what stood out in September. Transport increased by 3.35%. And that just comes from more driving, more flying, more shipping. Waste emissions increased by 4.08%. And that comes mostly from landfills, which are releasing methane. Agriculture, on the other hand, decreased slightly by 0.05%. And other sectors like buildings, manufacturing, minerals and power stayed roughly the same. But the big picture, basically the sectors linked to movement on consumption are rising the fastest. Now let's look at where emissions are rising and where they are falling. Of course, there are some countries that are making progress. You've got the Philippines, for instance, which have gone down by 4.6% this September compared to last September. You've got Vietnam, which is down 4.9%. There is also South Africa, which is down by 1.85%. Even India is down by a small but meaningful 0.3%. But the world's largest emitters, where the cuts would matter most, saw increases. And these cover the United States, which went up by 1.36% contrary to what happened in August. There's Indonesia, which went up by 7.63% compared to September last year. There's Russia, which went up by 2.09%. And then there's Brazil following Russia with 2%. The EU also went up by 0.68% and China went up by 0.09%. Does this tell us something? Sure, it tells us something important. Some progress is happening, but not yet where it needs to happen fastest. Another interesting thing to look at are cities. And that's where the real story lives. Because in some cases, your city shapes the planet more than your country does. Cities are responsible for the vast majority of emissions. And Climate Trace now shows emissions by urban area. So let's have a look. The highest emitting cities in September 2025 were Shanghai, Tokyo, Houston, Los Angeles and New York. Beyond this, cities seeing the biggest increases were mostly in Indonesia and Egypt. Cities cutting emissions the fastest were in Vietnam, the Philippines and Ghana. So why does this matter? Because what your city invests in, buses, trains, energy systems, waste management, affects both emissions and your daily quality of life. But let's take a closer look. What do these global numbers have to do with your daily life? Rising emissions aren't abstract. They show up in everyday ways. You've got higher food prices as climate stress affects harvests. You've got more extreme heat that can strain health systems. You've got more unpredictable weather and higher energy bills for as long as countries delay their clean energy transition. Of course, you also have more pollution in the cities, which can affect lungs and hearts. But here is the empowering part. Cities cutting back emissions often combine 3 things. You've got public pressure, you've got clear local climate plans, and you've got investments in clean infrastructure, which really means that change doesn't have to start at the top. It can start locally at your city council, your public transit system, your waste habits, and your conversations with neighbors. Okay, But let's take a look at the data through a human lens. So the data for September shows both challenges and possibility. The fact that transport emissions are rising means that we need better mobility options. Waste emissions rising means we need better recycling and landfill management. Power emissions falling in China and India show that clean energy can scale quickly when governments commit. And big emitters rising means that pressure from citizens, courts and global agreements matters more than ever. But Climate Trace doesn't just report numbers. It offers a map where action matters most. And that can range from global giants to your local landfill across town. If you are new to climate conversations, don't worry, you're in the right place. Each month I will break down the updates in clear and simple ways so that we can all understand what's shifting, why it matters, and what small changes can ripple outward. Okay, so the numbers are big, but the path forward is human-sized. And it's built from community pressure, local solutions, and by people who care enough to stay informed. If you would like me to cover a specific country, city, or sector next month, let me know in the comments. And if you found this useful, consider sharing it with somebody who might appreciate a calm voice in all the noise. Together, quietly and consistently, we can shape a safer future. Thank you for joining me today and see you again soon.